And after a brief hiatus of, I would say, a little over 6 to 9 months, a full MLB season, we are finally back with episode 22 of ClubCast. And a lot has happened between the last time where we were recording right before the season started to now, where we're in the middle of the winter, right on the recording this on Christmas Eve on December 23rd. A lot of stuff to catch up on in the MLB offseason, a lot of stuff to catch up with the Dodgers, the Phillies specifically, which is kind of why we kind of had a hiatus. We wanted to kind of not essentially rebrand, but kind of refocus on what we wanted to talk about more, just kind of what we're passionate about.
Mhm.
Dodgers fan here. Obviously, if you followed me, you obviously know I'm on the Bleed Those podcast, Dodgers Beat. And then my co-host here, Jake Huber, he's got his own Phillies side of Twitter and writing for That's Balls Out of there for Fansided. So clearly we want to kind of stay in our lane there, talking about our teams where we know the most stuff. And clearly it's a good time to be a Dodgers and a Phillies fan. Obviously, the Dodgers are the defending World Series champ. Missed a lot. When we were talking last year, 2023 season, not that fun. And you didn't have it your season didn't end on a high note either after they got bounced in the CSO. Clearly, Jake, a lot has happened. We are finally back. It feels good to be back and talking baseball again.
Yeah, we're just all season guys, dude. It's just what we're here for. We're just, just here for about the splash moves and the trades and everything. But no, I think what you said was important. Just getting back to our roots, just being more so Phillies and Dodgers fans, because that's what made it really fun. You guys over there at Bleed Those are obviously great. All you guys are Dodgers fans, so it's really easy to talk about the Dodgers for 24/7. But over here, it'd be nice to be back in it. Upgraded. Cody's got the new setup, so it's fun, man.
Yeah, I'm going with the new year, new me, new look for the entire channel, new look for the podcast, but
Mhm.
the same two voices that make it run. So obviously, let's dive in here because there's a lot of stuff to talk about, especially with your Philadelphia Phillies. It has kind of been an up and down, I would say, road so far this winter. The Phillies obviously didn't have the season that they wanted to have to, especially entering this year. Had a really good team, won the National League East for the first time since 2011. They were on pace, to win like over 95, almost to 100 games. Ended up not getting to there, but they still got the division win. They go up against the hot Mets team, and then they end up getting, you wrote an article on Fanside to where they kind of got a taste of their own medicine of the New York Mets wild card team, hot Metropolitans. They weren't able to keep that fire going. They lost in the next round. So really the Phillies, if you're a fan looking at it, like you kind of lost for nothing. And as a Dodgers fan, I've felt that pain when we've been bounced, whether it's in the first round or the second round. And if that team doesn't win, it's like the entire thing, it stings a little bit more. Clearly, fans want to change. I'm not really sure how you felt about it. I think you were more optimistic about where they were heading. They had a good core, but it was frustrating, especially after Dave Dombrowski, the president of baseball ops for the Phillies, comments this past week where he really just said he wasn't going to do much for the rest of the offseason. But then out of nowhere, they make the trade for probably the top, trade arm on the market after Garrett Crochet and Jesus, or Jesus Luzardo.
Yeah, I think it's Jesus.
Yeah, and they get him. He's got controllable young lefty. They get him for a couple years, and I really think they didn't really get him for much. So I'm interested to see what your perspective is as a Phillies fan. Do you like the move? Are you okay with the low that you gave off? Like, break it down for me how you feel about this move.
Yeah, so obviously what you said is correct. It's been disappointing, but obviously I'm a more level-headed fan than the some of these other Phillies fans out here. Probably because I'm not an Eagles fan, but to each their own. But you can't expect a lot of change in the offseason. You've coming from that half decade of dominance that we had in the late 2000s with Utley, Howard, Rollins, those guys. How many different changes did you really see? I mean, you saw maybe a Jason Worth come in or Raul Ibanez come in, or eventually towards the end they started adding those crazy pitchers. But any team that succeeds is not going to overhaul their roster every year. And I know it sucks. I know it sucks that it seems like we're going backwards. You go to the World Series, you face one of the best teams in baseball. Makes sense. You go to the next year, you have that long collapse against the Diamondbacks. It hurts. You're coming back next year, everything's on the table. You add guys, you make this better team, you win the division, and then you go out and you lose to your division rival, just like you noted, like the Atlanta Braves did 2 years in a row. So I just think that it had to be a special move. It had to be more so a niche thing. It had to be, let's go and make this part of our team as good as it can be. With now having 6 to 7 starters on your team, it's up there with one of the best roster or rotations in baseball. Wheeler, Nola, Luzardo can slot in literally 1 to 3 in most rotations. Then you have 2 more All Stars last year in Suarez and Sanchez coming behind them. Painter, we have got some news on the top prospect Painter. It looks like he won't be pitching in spring training, Dave Dombrowski said, and he probably will not be pitching until the summer months like June or July, which you can't hate on. I mean, you're a Dodgers fan. You've seen the injuries. You've seen these guys get rushed through the system a little bit. So I think the changes, a lot of people want to see overhaul. I had some, rash words to say about certain Phillies third basemen and outfielders after what happened, but I think Dave has done a good job addressing needs, but not, putting themselves out on a leg and mortgaging the future.
I think as a Phillies fan, you're disappointed of the result. You lose in the first round of the playoffs after making the World Series in 22. You get bounced by the New York Mets in 20 or the Arizona Diamondbacks in 23 in the CS, and then you get bounced by the New York Mets in the DS this past season. Clearly, there's some frustration there because realistically, the window with this core, it's only going to be open for a couple of years. Clearly, they'll still add and get other players, but if you're talking about this core specifically, Kyle Schwarber, Castellanos, Alec Bohm, Bryce Harper, those guys, it's pretty much either this year or next year are we going to win it with these guys, or are we going to have to kind of retool it? I give credit to Dave Dombrowski because I would say that Dave Dombrowski in the past would definitely mortgage out your future and set you up for a lot more failure. I like the Dodgers' approach to a lot of these things, and I think the Dodgers do it the right way where they're going to never make a dumb move to where it's going to cost them in the next couple of years. There's a reason why the Dodgers have been the sustainable successful franchise since 2013. They've never missed a postseason since then. They've made countless World Series, league championship appearances. They're pretty much in the running every single year. Clearly, every year they have the money to spend. They put the product on the field. But the Phillies, I mean, would you want to trade Alec Bohm? Maybe. Would you want to get rid of Castellanos? I guess. But at the end of the day, I feel like they're still inevitably going to be on the opening day roster. And I don't know why Phillies fans hate Bohm, really, because he was an all-star last year. He had a really good first half of the season, but the second half obviously was ugly. But teams that you're going to trade with are going to see that as well. And I don't think the Phillies are ever going to get the asking price that they necessarily want. And, third basemen that can hit and play decent to solid defense don't come around often. I mean, like, who are you going to replace him with? The trade mill is Nolan Arenado, but he's making like $27 million this year, where Arenado's just in his second or third year of arbitration. So clearly, you're saving money with Arenado, who's going to put up similar numbers. Alex Bregman's a free agent, but he's could potentially get brought into a bidding war between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. So we don't know how much money he's going to get, in terms of a contract wise. And the Phillies have already, for better or worse, have already handed out a couple long-term deals. So I don't think they want to hand out another, 6+ year contract. I think the moves that they've done have been okay because I think at the end of the day, they're still a good team. I even said on X, I said they're probably still the second or third best team in the National League, especially looking at on paper. You look at the starting rotation, and we'll get into that right now. You got Zach Wheeler, you got Aaron Nola, Christopher Sanchez, who was an all-star last year, is also a lefty. Ranger Suarez, you mentioned, was an all-star, also a left-hander, has experience not only just in the rotation, but the bullpen, which is going to be an interesting topic as you get into spring training. Jesús Luzardo, Andrew Painter, probably sometime in the second half. And then the big one that everybody wants to get rid of is Taijuan Walker. But if the Phillies inevitably, more than likely, they're going to hold on to him because no one's going to eat that contract. That's 7 starters right there. Load management. I mean, the Phillies don't want to be gassed out when they get into October next year. So when you look at this starting rotation, I think the big thing it gives you is options for number one, and it gives you depth, and that's a great thing to have. When you look at the rotation, are you okay with it? Would you add anything to it? Are you on the camp of trying to get rid of Walker at all costs, or are you fine with the additions that they've added to this rotation if the season started today for the Phillies?
I mean, obviously Walker is not something that everybody wants to watch every fifth day. I agree with you on the load management side of things, but I don't know how willing I would be to move prospects to get rid of him at this point. Why the money really matters when you're into the second, third luxury tax at this point, the extra dollar is not going to help us, go out and get another player that can be impactful. Like you said earlier, Dave Dombrowski would normally mortgage the future, go get the big guy, make the big splash move happen. Like when the Chicago White Sox were asking for Aiden Miller and Justin Crawford, are two top prospects. I think that he was very restrainful and did a very good job with himself to get the package that he could to divvy that package up to the Marlins for two hitters, Marion Boyd and Starling Cabo, who Starling Cabo was one of our top prospects. But that bat is not something that could potentially develop. And while he is probably already an elite defender, these guys are just guys who are not going to play. They're middle infielder, quarter defenders that are not in the mix of things. So I would say you have your six guys. Painter's coming in halfway through the season. Honestly, you have about 3 months to test out Walker if you really wanted to. Ranger has that ability to come out of the pen, which has been so huge for the Phillies before, especially with this bullpen. That's why they did add Joe Ross, another long kind of reliever. Now at this stage in his career, former national starter, but Walker could be that stopgap until Painter gets there. With Ranger in the bullpen, everybody remembers his 2021 where he threw 100 innings, was a closer for us for half the season, had a 2.91 ERA as a reliever, over half a point lower than when he was a starter. That could be an option for Rob Thompson and Caleb Cotham and all of them. Like you said, I find it unlikely that another move is made, but Ranger is on the last year of arbitration. Luzardo has 2 years of team control, so that could be basically his replacement. It's all up to Dave. I'm not sure where his head's at. He did say, like he always does, we're done making moves about. But again, if something's laying on the table, it could be a Nick Castellanos kind of thing from 2022.
I mean, before I bring it back to Luzardo, who is the main topic of this entire video right now. Walker is owed $36 million over the next 2 years, $18 million AAV. I don't think it's honestly, if you look at the starting pitching market this year, I think a team may bite at that, especially if he can give you innings. I don't think Walker really had like injuries last year, did he? Like what was his overall numbers in terms of innings pitched?
He pitched 83 innings, but that was because we shut him down because he was bad.
Okay, yeah. So, I
mean, but the year before he had 172, 157, 159. He's got a career 4.19 ERA. He's not terrible.
Yeah,
last year was just so bad.
Yeah, he could definitely give someone like third, I would say fourth or fifth starter, give you some innings. I mean, we'll get into it later, but we're starting to see, this starting pitching market this year in terms of, looking what the Mets did with Frankie Montas, giving him a multi-year deal, millions of dollars per year. I mean, it's crazy right now. So a team could bite on getting him, but I think the Phillies' best case scenario, I mean, it's just money. Just eat it. See what you can run back with Walker next year. And if he can give you some good, meaningful innings, doesn't mean he has to pitch for you in October, but if he can help your rotation out for the long haul throughout the season, and say Andrew Painter does come up, say he is healthy and he's ready to take the next step in his career, that's a guy that you would want pitching in big games once you get there. But then again, that's a couple months from now. We'll definitely probably be talking about that. You'll probably be writing about that, in July, August, whenever we get to the regular season. But moving to Luzardo, what do you like about this trade? What do you like about the guy? Do you think the Phillies gave up too much? Break down the whole trade package for me real quick.
Yeah, so I touched on it before. Starling Caba, there's a middle infield prospect, one of our top prospects in the system, probably top five, I had to guess. But very good glove, probably Gold Glove MLB caliber player at this point. But the bat just wasn't there. It's just not something that would develop. Marion Boyd was the other guy that we sent. I believe he was a corner outfielder, kind of middle infielder. He kind of played all over the place. I'm pulling it up right here. I want to see where they landed on the Marlins top prospects list. But yeah, so Starlin Cobb is now the third ranked Marlins prospect, and Marion Boyd's down the board a little bit. I don't even know if he ranks for them, but it's just real skill guys. Not anything crazy. I think the biggest thing is the bats. At this point, you need a bat to develop. We've seen guys like Trey Turner be one of the best players in baseball with a pretty much a below average to poor glove at shortstop develop. So I believe if you're giving up mid-level prospects for 2 years team control of I think he's 27, Jesus Luzardo, fireball lefty, wipeout slider, basically it seems like a pretty good deal to me. I woke up and I saw it and I saw who he gave up and I didn't blink. Anybody basically outside of Justin Crawford, Aiden Miller, those top guys would probably be available in that Luzardo trade. But I looked into it and I saw it, but no rumors were out this year. Last year, Jesus Luzardo was blared over the whole MLB landscape, and this year we didn't hear nothing about him. That's why it was kind of a surprise. But I think Dave just does really well in taking advantage of the opportunities, like he always said about Nick Castellanos. Like I pointed on, I think that could be another destination for Ranger at the trade deadline. Maybe half a year a Ranger could gain some value somewhere. So I think this is definitely plus value for the Phillies. It sucks to hurt Caba, but I mean, what happens to the rest of the prospects that we trade to the Marlins? We see.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much you just sent the Marlins into their next 5-year rebuild after their previous 5-year rebuild, where they'll inevitably probably go on their next 5-year rebuild after that. So clearly, I mean, obviously that's the art of the deal. You're gonna give up to get some, and I really don't think the Phillies gave up much here. I've never heard of those prospects. Clearly, a lot of other Phillies fans haven't really heard of them unless you're a hardcore fan like yourself. But like even you said, you didn't really give up much. Luzardo, when healthy, is one of the best left-handed starters in baseball,
Absolutely.
and he still has 2 years of club control left. So even if you don't end up re-signing him long-term after he leaves, like I said at the beginning of the episode, the Phillies' window to win right now with this core is either this year or next year. They have to win a World Series or get the National League pennant or do whatever they have to do right now over these next 2 years. And I think that's where a lot of Phillies fans are frustrated. At the end of the day, I think this was a good move for the Phillies. Kind of came out of nowhere because Luzardo was on the trade block. Like I saw rumors with the Cubs. I saw rumors, even last deadline, there was a lot of people that were involved in trying to get him. The Marlins that ended up keeping him because they wanted to trade him in the offseason, probably to maximize some more value there. But he gets traded. I was kind of surprised it was the Phillies because we didn't hear anything about that. And I feel like it's kind of weird that the Marlins like trading with the Phillies so frequently, especially the past couple years. It just seems like, the Marlins could be the Phillies, quadruple A farm system per se. But I just thought that was the whole interesting. It kind of came out of nowhere, left field. Robert Murray was the first one to report it. So none of the big guys even really had any, sniffing this type of deal either. It's interesting because I don't think he's going to give you maybe that he could give you like a Cy Young caliber season, but I think he's 100% a really good starter to have in the bottom half of your rotation that's headlined by, the three-headed monster at the top, especially with Nola and Wheeler. Let's look at the Phillies offseason and just in general so far, what they've done. The additions up until now on Christmas Eve on December 23rd. Max Kepler, who I know you were big on. Jordan Romero, who was released by the Blue Jays. Jesus Luzardo, who just got traded. And then they actually just signed Joe Ross, who's kind of in a hybrid starter relief role. They have lost some guys. Jeff Hoffman is probably the big one of that group, but they could still bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
What would you just grade it, off the top of your head? Are you happy with the moves they made? Because like I said at the beginning of the episode, it seemed like the Phillies had much to fix, So that's why I'm not surprised that they're not going, full board. They weren't in on Juan Soto. They weren't in on these other big guys. But what are your thoughts on the entire offseason so far?
I'm a big Jack Fritz guy, WIP. I was listening to the High Hopes podcast with him and James Seltzer after they signed Jesus Luzardo. And one thing they pointed out that stayed with me 100% was the signing or the trading of Jesus Luzardo makes the other moves look better. Like if you told me that the Phillies got Jordan Romano, Joe Ross, and Max Kepler, I'd be in on Max Kepler, obviously. But if you told me that was the Phillies offseason, I'd be upset. But if you told me that they got those three guys and then added one of the best starters in the National League, probably a top 10, 15 starter in the National League, that makes, hey, now you have a experienced closer, a high leverage closer. Joe Ross, man, I was looking at his stats. He had a 3.77 last year. He started 10 games, pitched 15 out of the bullpen, 74 innings. This is a whole new dude. Looks like 2015 Nationals, Joe Ross, man. I'm kind of in. I'm kind of in on that. So I think in culmination, it looks really, really good. Obviously, you wanted to see him go after the main guys, but let's be honest. Who really thought we were getting Soto? I liked Tyler O'Neill. I thought I was a little more rash just because I was a little upset. But now with everything calming down a little bit, I would have to put it into probably the top 10 offseason of the MLB teams probably.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of fish in the ocean right now. Like I said, Bregman's still out there. Teoscar Hernandez still remains unsigned. A plethora of other guys. Corbin Burns, another one.
Yeah.
That's a big name that's still out there. I don't imagine the Phillies getting any of those guys unless, per se, their market just falls off completely. Who knows what happens over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I think it's solid. I think Kepler is a guy that I was high on. I know you were high on him as well. Romano is a guy that, you can take him, get him back to what he was the year before, and then you got an all-star closer or a setup man right there. So I think the Phillies are in good hands. I think they're in a good spot. The Atlanta Braves, really, they're kind of banking on their guys coming back from being hurt and then being productive this year. And I think that's a big gamble. And I know the Mets signed Juan Soto. They re-signed Sean Manaea, but that starting rotation still doesn't really, scare me at all. And that's, not trying to say it because, we beat them in the NLCS and they still barely made the playoffs. They still have some question marks on there as well. And, first base, what are they going to do with that? Is Big Meat Pete going to come back? It's looking like that because it doesn't look like he's going to get the contract he wants. So it's a gauntlet in the NL East right now. And I still think the Phillies, barring anything that dramatic happens with the Mets or the Braves or the Nationals, like they're still probably the overall favorite to win the division again. But who knows? I mean, we've seen crazier things happen, right?
I would say this pitching depth is kind of the biggest thing. I think when you compare teams, it's kind of like the Brewers conundrum the last couple of years. The Brewers team never looks that good, but you always know they're going to finish first because their pitching is just so deep. I think that's what kind of puts the Phillies kind of separates the gap a little bit. But I can't say anything after what happened, so I'm just going to bite my tongue.
All right. So we'll kind of switch gears from East Coast to West Coast here, but it still does, kind of concern an East Coast team. That was the news that broke this morning. Walker Buehler ending up in Boston with a 1-year, $21.05 million contract. Overall thoughts before I give you a deep dive on my opinions. Are you surprised about the number figure he got? Are you surprised he left the Dodgers? Are you surprised he ended up in Boston?
No, and no, probably. I was watching some Robbie Hyde. I just love talking about the other content creators, but he pointed out something to me was basically they replaced him with Nick Pivetta. They offered Nick Pivetta, or they replaced Nick Pivetta with him. They offered Nick Pivetta the qualifying offer, ended up signing Walker Buehler for exactly the qualifying offer. So they'll probably also get the pick once Pivetta signs because it doesn't look like he's going to come back. But yeah, I'm a big Buehler guy, obviously, just being so close to the Dodgers. I mean, obviously, just knowing everything about the guy, he's how can you not like him? So I think the fit kind of worked out in Boston. They're looking for a high risk, high reward kind of guy that could really elevate that team to the next level. That rotation 30 now with Crochet, and then of course Houck was so good to be in last year. Buehler, and then all the young guys. Buehler is actually going to be the oldest guy or tied with Lucas Giolito in that rotation, which is crazy to think about.
And he's only 30.
Right. He's only 30. But yeah, the experienced veteran Walker Buehler, yeah, I like it. I think he'll reestablish his market and then probably get at least a multi-year deal next year.
Yeah, that's the thing where so I was curious of what Buehler was going to get. Like I mentioned the Montas deal, I thought that was going to throw kind of a tailpipe into the entire starting pitching market because Montas got a multi-year, $1 million contract.
Right.
So then there was reports out on, on the Dodgers side of things where it looked like Buehler and his camp were looking for something similar as well, like a multi-year contract offer, trying to cash in on that October success. He ends up opting for just the 1 year, deal, which I thought would be likely for him to get, a couple months or a couple weeks ago when the offseason first started, where I was like, yeah, get a 1 year deal, reinvent your market, maybe pitch for a competitor. Hell, maybe even pitch for, a bad team per se. Like I thought maybe the Rays were an option, maybe the Guardians, hell, the Athletics showed interest. Maybe go somewhere where you can just focus on yourself and not the organization as a whole, worry about you and then retest the market next year and see if you can get that big deal that you were looking for that you would have probably gotten had you not had Tommy John surgery again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the whole thing with the Dodgers comes in. The Dodgers, for better or worse, they got the last ounce of baseball that they wanted out of Walker Buehler. If you looked at his regular season this past year, it wasn't pretty. I mean, there was a point, if it wasn't for Glasnow, having season-ending injury, Kershaw having a season-ending knee and toe injury, we're probably talking about Walker Buehler not even being on the postseason roster. He was that bad this year. He finished the year with an ERA of 5.38, 1-6 record, career high 1.55 FIP. Or a whip, and then a 316 batting average of balls in play, all career highs. If you look at it across the board, he wasn't striking out guys. He was walking more people than ever. His strikeouts per nine were at a career low. Just not a good year for Buehler as a whole. However, the last couple of starts, he started to put it together, and then we saw what he did in October. I'm going to just take away the first start of the postseason because the defense kind of failed him in that moment, but he still gave the Dodgers a solid 5 innings of one. It should have only been 1 earned run. It was a 6 run on his line score, but he showed a lot of grit, took that into the NLCS, had a shutout, 5-inning shutout performance there, goes into the World Series, 5 or 6 inning shutout in game 3, and then he comes in and closes out the World Series. I mean, what else could you ask for from a guy, that started out the season, terrible, ended up going on a hiatus for a couple weeks in Florida. I was in Philadelphia covering that game, and we were like talking to Dave Roberts, like, well, where is he? And nobody had any answers. It seemed like he went AWOL. That's actually when I heard the Red Sox were like they were interested in trading for him. And I brought that up to Robbie Hyde. I brought that up with Rob Bradford on Baseball Isn't Boring. And there was interest there, but the Dodgers opted to just keep him because they realized that, we'll probably need the starting pitching depth down the line. And thankfully they did keep Buehler because he was a massive part of why they won the World Series this past year. They didn't offer him the qualifying offer out of respect and out of fear that he would probably accept the $21.5 million qualifying offer. And I imagine they didn't think his market was going to, gain that much interest, but it ended up doing it. The Red Sox, like you said, like what Robbie Hyde alluded to, is that they basically just got Buehler to replace Nick Pivetta, and they didn't have to give up a draft pick. And that's a huge thing with the Red Sox offseason right now, is they don't want to give up draft picks. And Buehler just, I figured if he didn't sign with LA, I had Boston like circled. It just felt like Buehler fit the city, fit the team, and fit the rotation perfectly there. Like you said, he's going to be the oldest guy in that rotation. That does look nasty. I mean, looking at it on Fangraphs right now, you got Garrett Crochet, who you just traded for. They didn't really give up much out of their farm system. Tanner Houck, Brian Bello, Cutter Crawford, and then Walker Buehler. And then, you got some other guys in the farm system as well. You got a really, really good bullpen right now. Liam Hendricks will be back. Aroldis Chapman, they signed on a 1-year deal. A lot of stuff to like about the Boston Red Sox coming up for 25. And Walker Buehler, I think, is going to be a big part of that because I just look at what he did in October. He changed up the pitch selection, started throwing his cutter and off speed more. He became what a lot of people in the organization knew, is that he's now a pitcher, where he now knows how to, pitch mix, sequence, switch things up, keep hitters off balance, because he still does have the velocity, but the fastball, for whatever reason, just doesn't have the same zip to it in terms of being dominant, where he could just throw you a fastball right down the middle and then fuck you, go hit it. That's essentially how he pitched his entire career. Couldn't do that this year, and I feel like that's why his regular season success was so down, is because he still tried to pitch like that. And in October, the last two starts of the regular season, he switched the gear, and credit to him, he became a pitcher and got that 1 year deal in Boston, which seems like recently there's a lot of Dodger guys that go to Boston nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, they were showing the Boston Dodgers on Twitter earlier with all them, but yeah, anybody with the elbow, the shoulder, the back, any problems like that, it becomes hard to rip the ball. So that's why the spin rate's down. It doesn't have that zip, like you said. It doesn't rise. You look at these guys like Garrett Cole and their fastballs that stay straight and rise. It's because their spin rate's 3,000 fucking RPMs. But that's the things that people don't look at that is so important, not only in baseball but in pitching. The confidence, the repertoire, the understanding what you can throw, what you want to throw, what you need to throw. Like you said, watching him throughout the playoffs, gaining confidence back, trusting his arm, and then, like you said, learning how to pitch. Are you getting, the elite 97, 98 mile an hour fastball from rookie Walker Buehler? No, but you're getting on, a discount, a 1 year deal. You're getting a Walker Buehler that can throw all of his pitches for strikes where he wants to throw them, can command the zone, trusts his stuff. He's not just, like you said, he's not just going up there throwing the ball. I think that is kind of the behind the scenes stuff that people don't look at, and is so important for pitching, because if you don't have confidence, you don't have command, if you don't trust yourself, it's never going to work. And maybe that's another reason he went to Boston, because he just shit on the Yankees. I don't know, but I just think the confidence, the winning the World Series, the being out there for the last out is just going to ride him and just elevate him back to kind of that plane that he was on before the injuries derailed him.
Yeah, then you also add in the fact, and this is, kind of what the Red Sox are. They're kind of a pitching factory right now, led by Andrew Bailey, who is well regarded as one of the best pitching coaches in baseball. He spent some time with the Giants, saw him up close what he did with their staff, because they've always had a really good pitching rotation, whether it was the starting rotation or the bullpen. Boston's kind of trying to replicate that over there. And if you look at them on paper, they look really good. And I think the American League is wide open. So we'll see what Walker Buehler and the Boston Red Sox do coming up in 2025. So I'm excited for them. When I look at the figure, though, 1 year deal, $21.5 million. I can see why the Dodgers just didn't go back with that, because in my mind, all the stats I listed off in the regular season, you still have to take into account. I know what he did in October. I know that's what the Red Sox are trying to sign him to be. And whatever team does, if say the Dodgers make the postseason and they get bounced in the first round, the first thing people are going to say, oh, well, where's Walker Buehler? Big game Walker Buehler. You got to look at, the history of the pitcher. 2 Tommy John surgeries, that really doesn't bode well. Regular season numbers weren't pretty. I just don't think it was worth a $21.5 million gamble, which is why I think the Dodgers, like I said, didn't offer him the qualifying offer. He was eligible to receive it. They could have gotten a draft pick right now off of this, but they believed it was going to hurt his market. So out of respect, they didn't offer it. And 2, they thought he was going to accept it, because I imagine if they did offer him the qualifying offer in November before the deadline, when he had to choose to either accept it or deny it, I think he probably would have taken it to return to Los Angeles. I don't think the Dodgers are going to be licking their chops, letting him go. We're going to get into it on our last topic about what their starting rotation looks like, but they have the depth right now, and they're not done. Obviously, they're still in the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes. They could inevitably sign another starter if they really want to. That money is but an object to the Dodgers right now. They really don't care. I'm interested to see what they do, but I think the rotation as it is, I just don't think Buehler would have been guaranteed a spot like he's guaranteed a spot in Boston.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing where if you have the money, it's a no brainer. But if you're up against that tax or looking to fill holes, it just doesn't make sense, especially when you're paying 60%. You're the numbers guy. Whatever you're paying on tax now, it's fucking.
So any deal the Dodgers sign, I even brought it up yesterday or the other day when I was talking about Ha-Seong Kim.
Yeah.
Dodgers tax, because they're $40 million over, is like a 60+ charge, and because they've consecutive year of the CBT, it's 50. So technically, any deal they sign is 110%. So
They're paying $40 million
double plus
for
10. Yeah, so a $110 million deal is like is technically like a 22 to $25 million deal. I'm not a math guy there, so do the math in your head for what I care. But that's the question, and this is the topic we'll end. I saw someone immediately after Luzardo was traded to the Phillies. If you look in the National League, despite the Phillies losing in the first round, I think you could probably say that the two best teams in the NL, which is extremely deep and competitive teams, it's likely the Phillies and the Dodgers at this point right now until other teams either when we start the regular season start playing well or if other teams start adding this winter. You look at the Dodgers rotation, it is headlined by Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, who ended up avoiding surgery in the offseason. That's a big one. Shohei Ohtani will be coming back to two-way player status this upcoming year. Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May are back, and then you got Bobby Miller, who I'm still high on, despite him being atrocious this past year. He's still waiting in the wings as a depth starter. And
Yeah.
like I said, the Dodgers aren't done, the Phillies aren't done either. But then you look at the Phillies rotation. Zach Wheeler, the guy that's been in the Cy Young conversations, has fallen just short, but has probably been the most consistent starter since he signed that deal in Philly. You got Aaron Nola, consistently one of the more dependable arms. Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, Taijuan Walker, and then waiting in the wings for the second half of the season, Andrew Painter. I know you're a Phillies fan, and I'm kind of even going to probably agree with you on this for your reasoning, but who has the better rotation? That's the question everybody wants to know.
I'm gonna argue just because one, I pretty believe it, but also the poll that you retweeted 75%, 75 to 25% chose the Dodgers, but yeah, I think it's just two different types of rotation. You look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers have a lot of names, a lot of not bad that they're bad. The Dodgers have a lot of elite names that can be elite at times, um, but have injury history, uh, in innings limits, things like that. Last year they had two guys go over 100 innings, four guys the year before, but none had over 150. And two of those guys are named Kershaw and Julio Urias. So it's not the best innings, workhorse type of rotation. The Phillies have the workhorse rotation. Four guys over 150 innings last year, three over 180, and all those guys are coming back. But I think that's when you compare apples to apples, it's closer than so many people think. You look at, I don't know. You obviously Miller's probably your seventh guy, and then maybe Gonsolin. What is the other man out? If you're looking at everybody healthy, and then you look over the other side, you have four All-Stars and the guy you just added in Jesus Luzardo, and then you have the number 32 prospect in baseball and Andrew Painter coming halfway through the year. So it's really, you can get a lot of top end talent on either side. I think the consistency is just what puts the Phillies over for me. Some of these guys, I mean, Dustin May's never pitched more than 56 innings in a season. Blake Snell's had 180 innings to the exact in both of his Cy Young years, but in every other year of his career, he's never pitched more than 130 innings. He's never been an All-Star or received a Cy Young vote in any year but the year he won Cy Young. So Ohtani, you don't know what you're going to get. Obviously, he's probably the best pitcher in that rotation if he's healthy. And then you have Glasnow, who is another guy, Yamamoto, who honestly has the biggest leg of anybody, pitching almost 200 innings over in Japan like 3 years straight. But it's honestly, it's the innings things to me. It's too close of a battle to where that's what gives the Phillies the edge, the tiniest edge.
The way I look at it, and this is my quote tweet on it as well, is that I think the Dodgers rotation is more top heavy. I think it's more star studded per se. I mean, you
Right.
got the guys on there. You got the flashiness.
Yeah.
You got Blake Snell, 2-time Cy Young Award winner. The years that he gets the 180 mark, it seems like that's his golden year. And I think that's what the Dodgers are going to shoot. And right now, if you had to give me like a betting odds, if I was going to place a bet, I would say he's going to be the innings eater. He's going to be the one that's the workhorse when your workhorse is the guy who only has had 2 seasons of 180 innings, the rest hovering around 130 or less. It's not the best recipe for success, but the Dodgers, they go with a different route in terms of getting through a 162 season. And we have the depth to outdo any rotation in baseball. We can have guys come up through the minor leagues. We have major league guys that have experience in the bullpen and the starting rotation. They can give us innings. We love doing bullpen games. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Dodgers did more bullpen games than everybody but the Detroit Tigers last year. Out of necessity, a lot of their guys did get hurt. Not mentioned in that rotation is Clayton Kershaw, who will 100% be coming back. And if he's healthy, more than likely will be getting a start in that rotation just based off of him being a veteran and being on a tenured Dodgers player. And if he's healthy, he's still shown, despite his age, he's been a above average league starter. What concerns me is what you said, the Dodgers' health. I mean, that's the big thing that you would have to watch with the Dodgers right now. Ohtani is coming off 2 Tommy John surgeries and a labrum surgery from what he suffered in the World Series. We don't know what you're going to get with him. Talent-wise, if he is healthy, this is the guy that throws over 100 miles per hour, has 4 to 5 pitches, and just looks pure dominant on the mound with his like 6'7" frame. Blake Snell, he's got the finesse stuff. He will frustrate you with the walks, but he limited those last year and increased his strikeouts. So I think if the Dodgers continue working on that, it'll be awesome. Uh, Tyler Glasnow is the biggest one for me because it's just I want him to do so well. He did really good last year in his first season in Dodger Blue, and I'll always argue this. He set a career high in Ks, starts, quality starts, innings pitched. Walks were limited. He had a career year. It just he ended up getting hurt at the wrong time. I would have much rathered him have an elbow issue probably in June or July compared to late August where he ended up not pitching in October, which is what he was traded for. And Bobby Miller, I mean, that's a guy who has a lot of upside, still has a lot of team control left. So I would imagine he's the odd man out because he had an ERA at almost 8 last year. Tony Gonsolin's 2 years removed from leading the National League in wins or being like top 3 in wins with 22. And Dustin May, I mean, you know me, like Dustin May is like he's got the stuff, but he just can never stay healthy. And my joke on the Bleed Lows podcast and even in my writing is like when your career high innings is 2020, that's not a good thing. Like that shouldn't be your bragging right. And it's 2020 is when he had 56 innings as his career high. And it's crazy. I mean, if this guy can stay healthy, he's shown to be a dependable starter. He's earned 2 shots in the rotation in multiple years in 21 and in 23, and then ended up getting hurt with Tommy John, had the esophagus injury freak out of nowhere last year, so he didn't come back. But I still give the slight edge of the Phillies just because of the workhorse mentality that they have. I argue with it. When I had you come on the Bleed Lows podcast last year, I said, man, like if you look at the Phillies rotation, these guys are dogs. Like if I'm going to go in October, I'm sending the dogs out there. And they weren't the reason why you guys lost in October. They did what they needed to do. I mean, they pitched deep into games. They gave you length. They gave you the dominant starts that you needed. I mean, Wheeler in game 1, I mean, what else was he supposed to do in that game? He did everything he wanted to do. The offense was just the Achilles heel for the Phillies this past season. You know that more than anybody. So I still think the Phillies have the edge in that regard right now. But the Dodgers could always add. And like I said, I think they'll probably get Sasaki, which is who I think they're going to replace Buehler with. I think if you add just that many starters coming at you, I think that would put them over the edge for me because it's just like, hey, we have like 8, 9 arms. Like, what's your rebuttal to that? Like, who matter? It doesn't care. We don't care if Tyler Glasnow only goes 100 innings because we'll just have Sasaki take up the other 100 innings and we'll put it up there. But it's pretty even. These two teams are pretty even, and I'll give Phillies fans credit. Like, they're really close. Like, the Dodgers are projected for like over 100 wins next year, but the Phillies were like right under them at like 98, 97. So it's going to be a battle in the National League.
Yeah, that was the thing for me. I think the Dodgers, we say this every year, but I think they're in a very, very unique spot of how good that team is, that they have the opportunity, just like the Phillies do, honestly, but they have the opportunity to throw 7, 8 guys at a time. They could go a week and a half, 2 weeks without throwing a guy. It's honestly, it could be a revolutionary fucking thing. They could throw Dustin May twice a month, keep him online for the playoffs and have him ready because their team is good enough to, pick up the slack for that. I think that's where we haven't seen it from the Dodgers throughout the track record, but that's kind of where they could cut that, that head off and finally start to bring some health to that rotation because that's been the cemetery. That's been the arm cemetery for the last half decade to decade. But you look at the Phillies, man. Last year they had 3 top 11 Cy Young finishers. Number 2 in Cy Young. I mean, Wheeler's obviously the dog. He's not the question mark, but it's just tough to bet against them when they were so good last year. And I love Andrew Bailey. We talked about him, Philly legend. I love Mark Pryor and out there in LA, but Caleb Cotham and that staff is incredible in Philadelphia too. So either, like you said, it's so close, but it's all about health. If teams are both healthy, they're 1 and 2 in baseball.
Yeah, we'll see what happens the rest of this winter. I mean, clearly both teams still theoretically could add. The Dodgers are rumored with a plethora of names. The Phillies, despite what Dave Dombrowski says, my rule of thumb is never believe what they say to the public. They probably have something going on behind the scenes. I mean, just ask Alec Boehm. I'm pretty sure he sees all the rumors out there. They're probably still trying to shop him, so we'll see what happens, what they get back from him. Because the big thing with Boehm is they're trying to get more starting pitching. I don't know how much they're going to continue to try after getting Luzardo, but we'll see what happens. In the Dodgers, they're still linked to Teoscar. They're still linked to, a couple other options. Another one is if Corbin Burns really wants to take a short-term high AAV deal. I'm sure if he signs with LA, it'll piss off the rest of the league. We're used to it by now, but yeah, I think that's the running theme of this right now is that it's still early in the winter, despite it being almost Christmas.
Yeah.
We still got over, a month and a half left of the MLB offseason. And then before you know it, February hits, pitchers and catchers are reporting, and hopefully all these guys are off the board right now. We don't have a situation like last year. But other than that, I think it's a good way to cap off this episode and get us back into the grind and the swing of things here. Episode 22, we're going to continue to try to keep giving out more and more episodes week by week, but definitely with the holidays right now, we'll definitely have one coming out probably the next week.
When are we dropping this? Christmas? We dropping this Christmas?
I'm gonna upload it right away, so it'll be up. So Christmas Eve probably, or on if anyone's watching it late on the 23rd. So, yeah, it's good to be back and got a lot to talk about over the next couple of weeks. Any closing thoughts on this, Jake?
Absolutely. Nothing. Just fun to be back when we talk about Phillies, Dodgers, stuff we actually care about. So it's gonna be real fun. We'll get people on here that bring in different, topics. We'll have to bring the Mets boys back, unfortunately. But yeah, we're back. So stay in touch.
Yeah, we're back. And that'll do it for this episode of ClubCast. I am Cody. That is Jake. And this episode is concluded. Have a good one, guys.